Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to CAA Travel Talks. You're in for a treat tonight. We're going to be talking about all the essentials you need for your planning your winter getaway. And we have some very special guests with us tonight. We have Carrie Painter, who's our CAA Operations Manager. We have from Orion Insurance, we have Nick, and we have Lindsay, and they'll be sharing some essential tips that you need for you. I'm Karen Taff. I'm the Manager of Product Development and Groups at CAA North and East, and we welcome you and thank you for joining us this evening. All right, so we have a good number of people that are joining. I'm just going to give another moment. There is a little Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to address those at the end of the presentation. So feel free to drop those questions in as we go along. All right, looks like we have a good number, so we will get started. So first, we'll talk a little bit about CAA Travel. So CAA Travel, we have been in business since 1961, selling you worldwide vacations. Basically, we are your one-stop travel shop for all of your travel needs. And for CAA North and East, you're going to find some stores to service you in the Ottawa area, as well as Thunder Bay, North Bay, and Sudbury. Our travel counselors have been there. Everyone in our team, we're traveling and we're sharing information, and our team has become Travel Smart certified, meaning they've done a lot of training so they know what's going on in the world and are going to do all the heavy lifting for you to make the planning very easy and a very pleasurable experience. I mean, that's the fun part, isn't it? Is the anticipation of the next trip. So as a CA member, you actually have some exclusive benefits. Not sure if you're aware of that. So we have exclusive member benefits on cruises and guided tours. It really varies whether it's a free hotel stay or if it's shipboard credits on your cruise or discounts. There's always going to be a little something extra because you're a member with us. And if you're not a member, we can sign you up for an everyday membership as low as $30, and you're going to get all of those perks and, of course, the incredible Orion Insurance savings of up to 20%. So CA Vacations is a program that we have, and some of the perks are a 24/7 member care program and a best price guarantee. And as I mentioned, the travel insurance, you're going to be saving up to 20% as a member. And we say it's still the most important thing you're going to be packing is that travel insurance. The flight delays and cancellations have tremendously improved, but you definitely still need that protection because it's still happening. So now I'm going to share a little bit about our new groups department. It's called Together Groups by CAA Travel. So we are now just a year old, and we have created some very exclusive groups that you're not going to find anywhere else. We're creating them right from scratch, and some of the upcoming departures, we have a solo departure for Greece. So if you're a solo traveler and you don't want to pay that single supplement, we've got it all costed out for you. We've got some incredible long stays in Portugal that are doing really well for those that want to get away. For example, our February departure is very busy, and the temperatures in Portugal in February are a balmy 20, 22, in the evenings it gets down to 16 to 18, but it's absolutely perfect weather for walking around and sightseeing. We've created a solo Ireland program, and very exciting, we're for the very first time going to Morocco, and we have a program called The Great Escape. So with our Together Groups by CAA Travel, we are specifically focusing on some great group rates for you. We're doing, again, all the custom planning and being with you every single step of the way. Some of the departures include exclusive excursions. So it's not going to be something you're going to find anywhere else in the marketplace. All right, Nick, I'll just get you to go to the next one. So touching once again on this Great Escape Morocco. So this is, again, this is one of our special departures. We're calling it a Great Escape because there's going to be more inclusions in this particular program. And the pricing is inclusive. It's a 10-day holiday, $9,995. Members are always going to save a minimum of $300 on our groups. The departure date for this one is November 1st to the 10th, 2025, and your CAA travel counselor is going to be able to share all of the details for you. So our solo trips are, again, as I mentioned, again, we build them so you're not paying a single supplement. We've got some great rates at some properties in Ireland as well as Greece. Greece is focusing on Athens areas to be able to do some side trips to other islands and as well as Crete. The departures are September of 2025 and May of 2025, and they start at 7,000 for Ireland, 700, 735, and the dates are May to 4th to 14th, 2025 for Greece. Long stay Portugal is very popular, as I mentioned. It's a beautiful, beautiful climate in the our winter season. Dining out is exceptional. It's a very, very reasonable. I did meet our groups last January and February, and they absolutely loved the whole feeling in Lisbon as well as in the Algarve area. Very safe, very affordable, great way to get out of the country without going to a very hot destination. Very popular. And you've got a one-bedroom apartment that's right on the beach. And this is the departure of February 7th to March 2nd and starting at 4,349. And that includes your airfare from Toronto. If you need a connector, we can assist you with that as well. Now I'm going to hand it over to Carrie Painter, and she's going to tell you what's trending in 2024 and 2025.
Hello. Nick, can you move it to the next slide? Thank you. So what's trending coming up in 2024 and 2025? USA, Canada is a top destination. Mexico, Dominican Republic, Portugal, United Kingdom, Cuba, Spain, Italy, and Costa Rica. If you already have an upcoming trip, ensure your travel documentation is up to date. Make sure you have your local government approval for entry if it's required. Passport. If you need a passport photo, you can head on over to a CAA store and save with your CAA membership. Nexus card will help you save time going through security. Check with your travel consultant to ensure you have all your required documents. Register as a Canadian traveling abroad. Have a mobile device with data plan. And before traveling, always check the latest travel advice and advisory information at travel.gc.ca.
Yeah, it's really important that you actually go into your passport and check the expiry date. Many countries now are asking for that passport to be valid for 6 months. So it's a good idea to have that ready even before you have your trip booked.
Road tripping to the States. Planning a road trip? Our CAA membership provides roadside assistance coverage all over Canada and the United States. And if you're renting an RV, you can save with Canada Dream RV rentals. Their fully equipped kitchens and bedrooms mean saving on a hotel accommodations and restaurant meals. Greater comfort for families, more room to sit, play, and rest while traveling. It's a great way to travel and see the country. Now, I would like to introduce Nick Nardoza, who is our Partner Relationship Manager from Orion, and Lindsay Taylor, who's our Partner Relationship Specialist. They will be talking to us about Orion Insurance.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for having us, guys. It's always great to be able to talk to our members. So just so you guys know, Orion Travel Insurance, we're the ones that are the insurer. We are the CAA Travel Insurance provider. We create the product. So we're going to give you guys a couple of tips, a little bit of information around travel insurance. We know insurance can be a little bit complex at times, so feel free to ask any questions. Just we'll answer all of them at the end. Normally, we get a ton of questions about travel insurance at these events, so we'll try to be as clear as possible. So really the goal of travel insurance, it's to protect you while you're on your trip, right? Whether we're talking about cancellation and interruption, which would protect the investment you've made on your trip, or the emergency medical coverage. Like Karen and Carrie said, it is the most important thing that you could pack with you when going on your vacation. We know there's still a large percentage of maybe not a large percentage, it's shrinking, but there is a percentage of Canadians that are going on their trips without any travel insurance whatsoever, or they're trusting that maybe their group plan is providing them what they need, or maybe they had existing credit card coverage, right? Existing insurance on their credit card. It's very important to validate and make sure that you have adequate coverage. Now, what does CAA Travel Insurance provide? It provides you that peace of mind while you're traveling. So we give you up to $5 million Canadian worldwide coverage. So no matter where you're going, what any of those destinations that Karen was mentioning earlier, we will provide you with that emergency medical insurance. Our claims and assistance provider is a very robust global network of medical facilities. So we have clinics and hospitals a little bit all over the world where we're going to be able to tell you, go to this clinic or go to this hospital. And we'll be able to arrange for direct billing as well, so you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. We do have optional coverage for pre-existing conditions, and Lindsay's going to cover that off in a few slides. It's a really important aspect of travel insurance, is understanding your pre-existing medical conditions and how that could affect your travel insurance coverage. We do have deductibles as well. So generally, the older we get and the longer duration trips that we take, the insurance premiums start becoming more and more expensive, right? So deductibles are a fantastic way to manage the cost of your insurance. We see medical inflation in the United States, which is the preferred destination for Canadian travelers. It's been kind of rampant over the last 3, 4, or 5 years. So in consequence of that, travel insurers, not just CAA, travel insurers across Canada have had to increase their rates in order to match that medical inflation in the States, right? We receive you pay your premiums in Canadian dollars, but if you're claiming in the United States, we have to pay that in US dollars. So we have to match the medical inflation, we have to match the exchange rate. So deductibles are a way to kind of counteract that effect of rate increases. Some of them, they range from $250 up to $5,000 or $10,000 options. And it makes sense in a lot of cases to apply those deductibles, especially when you're looking at your higher end premiums. Any premium that's $1,000 or more, it starts to make sense to look at least a $250 or $500 deductible. And if you're somebody that travels year after year, or if you're a snowbird, somebody that escapes during the winter, by consistently applying deductibles year over year, that starts creating savings, a lot of savings over 5, 10, 15 years. So speak to your CAA travel insurance representative to see which deductibles might work for you. We have a whole bunch of options there. And we have options for single trips. So if you're just taking one trip, we have plans for that. We have multi-trip plans. So if you're somebody that's planning on taking 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 trips throughout the year, we have multi-trip plans to cover that. And as Karen mentioned, CAA members can save up to 20% on their travel insurance premium. So what's covered? Generally, when we look at emergency medical insurance, and Lindsay's going to speak in a little bit more detail around some examples of how we do this, but we don't look at the medical emergency in isolation. So for example, if you fall and you break your arm, right? We all just think travel insurance is going to cover me for the treatment, x-rays, surgery, getting a cast on, whatever those treatments are. But there's a whole bunch of other challenges that travelers will face if they experience a medical situation while they're on their trip, right? So we have a whole bunch of different benefits that were created to address those challenges that travelers are facing. So not only do we cover the hospital and doctor expenses, we have things like return of vehicle, which Lindsay will speak to in a little bit. We could have your family transported to your bedside if necessary. Emergency dental treatment if you receive an accidental blow to the face, which causes damage to your teeth. There's coverage for that as well. Air ambulance. So if you need to take an air ambulance or get repatriated back to Canada, these are all things that are covered by the policy. And a whole list of other benefits. I'm not going to go through them one by one because there's even more in our policy, but it's a very robust plan. Orion and CAA really are proud with the fact that we provide best-in-class coverage when it comes to travel insurance. And we were really created to provide a better member experience for CAA members and Canadian travelers and to pay as many claims as we possibly could. It's the whole reason why Orion was founded. So I'll hand it off to Lindsay to discuss the multi-trip plans.
Thanks, Nick. So multi-trip coverage. So one of the options that we offer is the multi-trip emergency medical plan. And they really are a perfect option for travelers who travel often or have more than one trip planned within a year. It's a convenient way of staying protected 12 months of the year. So as Nick mentioned previously, the durations that we have available that you can choose from are between 4 days, 8 days, 15 days, 30 days, or 60-day durations. Those would be selected. So for example, if you travel normally within a 2-week period at a time, we would suggest the 15-day annual plan would be the one to choose. That way it covers you for your multiple trips throughout the year for 15 days at a time. Another option for that if there is a particular trip that you are going to be over the 15 days and say you're going to stay 20 days on one trip, then you can have the option of topping up that policy with our top-up plan. So you would be purchasing the 5 additional days to provide the coverage for the full 20 days of that trip. Another great benefit with the multi-trip annual plans are each time you return to Canada, the trip duration does reset. So for example, if you are traveling to the East Coast, say you want to travel into the New England states for a couple of days, once you return back to Canada, it doesn't have to be your home province, but once you return back to Canada, you would have the full 4, 8, or 15, depending on what option you choose for your annual plan. You would get that full duration back again. This plan also has great benefits for unlimited Canadian coverage. So if you do travel, say a trip out to BC in the summertime and you want to go for 30 or 40 days or whatever that may be, the multi-trip plan will cover the entire duration of that trip within Canada. For the emergency medical insurance, as Nick mentioned, it covers up to 5 million Canadian for emergency medical expenses and non-medical expenses. So it really does cover and treat the emergency situation from start to finish. So it does cover the cost of unforeseen medical emergencies when you leave home. When a medical emergency happens, as Nick mentioned, we look at the entire situation. So not just specifically that emergency situation. So for example, if you are at destination and you happen to fall, break your leg, we don't just cover the hospital expenses for that broken leg. We will look at to see what other benefits in our policy would cover for your certain situation. So if you drove down to Florida and you can no longer drive back home, we will look after the return of vehicle. Or for example, if you do travel with your pets and your pets need to be brought back home because we've had to fly you back to your home province, that is something that we would also cover under our plan. And as you can see, there is a bunch of other examples of what's included in our policy.
Okay, so this slide will highlight, it's just a few examples of what we see when it comes to claims. Okay, and these are just averages. I could tell you the number of large losses. So what we define as a large loss is any claim that goes over $100,000. Those are happening more and more frequently. Like I said, the medical inflation in the States is just getting worse and worse. And it's big business in the States, right? It's not like what we're used to at home here. If they see that a certain treatment is becoming more frequent for people there, they're going to increase the cost of that treatment, right? It's a business thing for them. And once again, these numbers that you see here, so just for an example, broken leg, it could be as low as $8,000 up to $85,000, abdominal pain, $6,000 up to $165,000. Heart attack, $126,000 up to $295,000. Those are kind of just the averages of what we see. We've seen heart attacks where the claim has gone well over $1 million. Just last year, we had a very large claim that was almost at the $2 million mark. So just one thing to keep in mind, now that we're starting to see claims surpass, like 10 years ago, we normally wouldn't see a claim hit $2 million Canadian. It's becoming more and more frequent now in 2024. So if your existing insurance plan only provides you with $2 million of coverage, I know 2 million sounds like a lot, and I could, in full transparency, probably 99% of the time, $2 million is more than enough coverage. But we have seen claims over the last couple of years surpass that and have gone well beyond that $2 million mark. So it's very important to make sure you have at least that $5 million of coverage, right? Sometimes it's a very small difference in price, and make sure you have at least that adequate coverage. So this really just highlights the value of travel insurance. Like I said before, there's a percentage of Canadians that don't buy it before they leave. But imagine if you don't have travel insurance and then you break your leg and now you're $85,000 in debt to an American hospital, right? It's just not worth it. And just once coming back to that large claim that we saw last year that almost hit that $2 million mark, the premium for that policy was $50. That person bought a $50 travel insurance policy and they were covered for up to almost $2 million. So it's really worth it. I know at face value, the travel insurance can seem expensive, especially for those longer duration trips. But what's more expensive is not getting the travel insurance and then being part of that small percentage of Canadians where something severe does happen. It's life-changing, right? It could really ruin retirement, having to sell our home. It's a big mess from there. So it's very, very important to purchase the travel insurance. Make sure you have adequate coverage. Here's an example of the package plan. So the package plan essentially takes our emergency medical insurance and it'll tag on the trip cancellation and interruption. And Lindsay's going to speak a little bit more detail around the trip cancellation and interruption plans, but this is just an example of what a vacation package would cover. You see the premium there at around $950. That's what it costs to insure the trip. So that included the emergency medical coverage and the cancellation, which ensures the value of the trip, right? It's the financial investment that you made on the trip. It protects that. One of the children got tonsillitis. The medical costs on the cruise was $55,000. So once again, $950 premium, protection of $55,000 that family did not have to pay. Okay, so it's a no-brainer at this point, guys. We really need to make sure that we have adequate coverage before leaving our province. Now, this is a big one. Do I need medical insurance in Canada? There's a lot of people that misunderstand that. Yes, we have universal healthcare somewhat, right? You could take your Medicare card, government healthcare plan, and get coverage for the majority of expenses when you're in another province if you have an emergency medical situation. However, there's a lot of things that aren't covered that you might actually be charged for when you're traveling in Canada but outside of your province. So prescriptions aren't covered. Ambulance aren't covered, right? That's like between 250 or $500. The cost of a semi-private room, there's a bunch of ancillary fees, right? So it could stack up over time. So all of the things listed here, these are the things that are normally not covered by your government healthcare plan. And what we do, obviously, we don't charge the same amount of premium for somebody that's just traveling in Canada. We do have an in-Canada policy that's highly discounted for the fact that the majority of the medical costs are going to be covered by your government healthcare plan. So it's really, really cheap to buy a Canada plan if you are traveling to another province. And it just gives you that extra peace of mind knowing that all of these things that aren't covered by your government healthcare plan would be covered by your insurance policy. I'll pass it off to Lindsay to discuss some extra coverage that we have.
Perfect. So looking at the extended coverage and riders. So again, as mentioned previously, topping up your travel insurance coverage. So whether it is you have a multi-trip plan with us, again, you can top up that policy for a number of days if you need. We can also do a top up if you have a group plan. So if you have, for example, under your group plan, if you have, again, a 10-day policy and you need 20 days, we can do a top up for that 10 additional days. And then going into the riders, so I'll go a bit more detail in the pre-existing condition rider on the next slide, but we do have that option available. We also have the adventurous air activities rider. So some examples would be a hot air balloon, parasailing, or even helicopter excursions that are becoming more popular. If that is something that you are looking to do on your vacation, and you can either add that rider for the adventurous air activity before you leave if you are aware that you're going to be doing one of those activities to get that coverage. Or you can add it on at destination prior to participating. We also have the sports and speed rider. So this would cover you in the event of either a sickness or injury, participating in or training, I believe competing or practicing. So for example, if you are traveling to Florida and you want to join one of those NASCAR speedway experiences, this would provide coverage for that type of activity. We also offer the rental vehicle damage insurance. So there's no maximum age restrictions for this one. You can travel or purchase this policy up to 60 days, and the benefits are up to $80,000. Now moving into the pre-existing medical condition. So this is, I would say, a fairly important one to understand. And one of the number one reasons why claims are denied is clients not aware of how their pre-existing potential would prevent them from purchasing the plan, sorry, not purchasing the plan, from having them that covered under the policy. So the coverage itself is a maximum, it provides coverage for a maximum of 200,000 per insured per trip for hospital and medical related expenses for a pre-existing condition that is not stable prior to the date of your trip. So in terms of stable, for people that are age 69 and under, we have a 3-month prior to departure date stability clause. And for anyone 70 and over, the stability clause is 6 months prior to your departure. So as an example, if you have had high blood pressure for 5 years and there's been no changes in your medication, you've been on the same medication in those last 5 years, that would be considered a stable condition. However, using that same example, if you've been feeling tired lately or just a bit off and you wanted to see your doctor and just check in after seeing your doctor, and he says, or she says it could be related to your high blood pressure and want to run further tests. After the tests come back, if they decide that it is related to high blood pressure and they adjust your medication, and they want to see you for a follow-up in 6 weeks just to make sure that adjustment has worked. 6 weeks later, you go back, you check in, everything is great, you're no longer fatigued. How does this change impact your insurance? So your stability clause, or your stability date, sorry, would be the date of the follow-up appointment. So the day that your doctor gives you the green light and says that the adjustment is working. So for the pre-existing medical condition rider, you technically in that scenario, if you would need to wait the 3 to 6 months because the change in medication, again, depending on age, 69 and under or 70 and over, anything related to the high blood pressure that you want to have coverage, you would want to apply that pre-existing medical condition rider. So that would provide you coverage again up to the 200,000 maximum. And you would have to be stable for 7 days prior to your departure date in order to add that on. So it is super important to understand your pre-existing condition. And if you are considered stable, again, if you are, then there's no reason to add the pre-existing rider. If you need the pre-existing rider because of a change in medication, as an example, we do have that option to add on to your policy for that particular trip.
I just want to add to that. It's really important. So what your doctor might say, like your doctor's likely going to tell you, like the same type of example that Lindsay mentioned earlier, if you've had a heart condition for the last 20 years, right? And your doctor decides, oh, well, you know what, there's this new medication that's on the market, or you know what, we'd like to tweak the dosage and try and see if this is going to help you if you were feeling tired or something, right? It's very important to keep track of those changes, because what your doctor's going to tell you, you're stable, we're just going to change your medication, or you're fully stable, we're just going to up the dosage or decrease the dosage. So stable from your doctor's perspective compared to what a travel insurer defines as stable are two different things. For travel insurance, and this is across the board, this is the standard of the industry, there can't be any changes to the type of medication that you're taking, to the dosage or frequency. Like Lindsay mentioned, no new symptoms or no new investigative testing. You can't be awaiting any tests, right, prior to your departure. So it's very important to keep track of these things, because if you've had that change in any of your conditions or something new that popped up within that 6 months prior to your departure date, it's likely that you'll have to look at something like a pre-existing condition rider, which is offered by CAA Travel Insurance. Not everybody offers this type of option. That would reduce that stability down from 6 months down to 7 days, just 7 days prior to your departure, and provide you $200,000 of coverage for that unstable pre-existing medical condition. Everything else is going to be covered to $5 million. But it's very important to keep track of these things. Like I said, unfortunately, people just like they'll take their doctor's word for it. Oh, I'm stable, I'm not going to mention it to my travel insurer. Somebody that's had a change in their heart condition 3 weeks before they go on a 3-month trip, something happens with their heart condition while they're on their trip, right? This is where denials start coming into play. So it's very important to keep track of these things. I see a lot of questions coming in. Don't worry, we'll address those right at the end. I'm sure there's a bunch of them related to this.
And then for cancellation and interruption, so just to explain the difference between the two, so trip cancellation really is the coverage to protect your investment. So as Nick mentioned earlier, um, if you're purchasing that trip cancellation, it's anything that's going to happen before your trip. So if you wake up and you become ill and you have to be hospitalized, or even if you're staying, say, with someone in destination, whether it be a relative or a friend, and they've been taken to the hospital, and you can no longer go on that trip, the trip cancellation portion will come into play for those type of scenarios. The trip interruption provides coverage to reimburse out-of-pocket expenses due to interruptions or delays while on vacation. So as an example, if you were at the airport and trying to get onto a secondary flight to make it to your next stop, and there's a major snowstorm and you can't get out, trip interruption would cover you for that type of scenario. It can be combined with emergency medical insurance, as well as part of our package plan, as Nick mentioned earlier. So really this just highlights the trip timelines. So when you book your trip, we really want to have the trip cancellation purchased at time of booking. So whenever you have any penalties come into play, we want to make sure that you are insuring that trip, so that if anything does happen prior to your departure date, that you would be fully covered for those prepaid expenses. Once the departure date hits, that is, again, once the trip interruption comes into play. So if you are at destination and something happens, say something happens at home to your home and you need to be flown back home, that is a part of our benefits where we would fly you back home. If there is enough time left on your plan, we do have what's called our bounce back coverage, which will return you back to destination to complete your trip as well.
So what's the difference for CAA? We have a whole bunch of different unique benefits. There's just a couple of them that are listed here. So Lindsay spoke about cancellation. So we have a benefit called cancel for any other reason. We also have interruption for any other reason. So what that means is in our policy, we have about 35 or 37 defined risks insured. So those are reasons for which you could cancel your trip and get 100% refund of the sum insured. So let's say you have a $5,000 cruise that you've paid. You've insured that $5,000 cruise with your $5,000 cancellation policy. If something happens prior to your departure, you're ill, or one of those 35 things or 37 things on our policy, you'll get 100% refunded. Cancel for any other reason is for anything that's not listed in that policy. So for example, you wake up and you just don't feel like going on vacation anymore. You don't really have any other reason, but I really don't feel like going. Maybe you have some travel anxiety. You could wake up and have a bad hair day and you don't want to go because of that. That's what cancel for any other reason is there for. Now, if you purchased your trip through a travel agency outside of CAA, you would get 50% of that sum insured back, 50% of that value back. And once again, that's for canceling for any other reason. Like once again, I'm waking up, bad hair day, I don't feel like going anymore. You could use cancel for any other reason for that. If you booked your trip through CAA, we'll increase that benefit from 50% to 75% of your sum insured. So there's a real strong connection there, really good benefit to book your travel with CAA and get the CAA travel insurance that comes with that trip. Interruption for any other reason is similar to what Lindsay mentioned before. So this is if you leave and you go on your trip and you get to your hotel room, you're like, oh my God, I hate this room. I can't see myself staying in this room for 10 days. Right? That is something that you could say, I'm going to interrupt this trip. We're going to give you 50% of the value of that trip back, and then you could come back home. We also have denied boarding and entry. This is really was a little bit more relevant throughout the pandemic when people were being denied boarding and denied entry to certain countries. It's not as relevant today. We're not seeing that many issues today, but the benefits are there. So if ever you are denied entry to your destination because of some health stipulations, then we have coverage for that. And like Lindsay mentioned, we have bounce back coverage. So the bounce back coverage is if you've left on your trip and something happens at home. So let's say you booked a month trip, a month stay in Portugal, for example. And the first week you arrive there, you get a call and God forbid, something happened to the house, flood, fire, or maybe you had an immediate family member who was hospitalized, right? these are this is what bounce back is for. It's to get you back home in order to deal with your affairs. You could stay here for a week and deal with everything you got to deal with here, and then we'll actually return you to Portugal to finish off that 30-day trip. Okay, so these are benefits that you wouldn't necessarily find everywhere. They're not standard in any way. So these are things that are unique to CAA. Here's another example. So this comes back to Lindsay's example that she gave before. So let's say you leave on your trip, right? And you don't have interruption insurance. What would happen in this situation, right? If you didn't buy the package plan, you only got the emergency medical insurance, it would have cost around $7,000, right? You would have lost the value of your trip because you missed the connecting flight and you couldn't get to the cruise on time, and it kind of snowballs, right? So a $234 vacation package plan covered this client for a $7,000 claim. Once again, this just highlights the value of the travel insurance plan and getting adequate coverage, right? This doesn't mean that you have to get cancellation or interruption, but we highly suggest it. It's just complementary to the emergency medical insurance, and it really does protect that financial investment that you made in your trip. And here's some frequently asked questions that we get. Do I need extra travel medical insurance when I travel outside my home province in Canada? So we covered this off before. There are a lot of things that aren't covered by the government healthcare plan. We highly discount the in Canada premium. So if you're only intending to travel to another province, we have Canada plans. In addition to that, Lindsay mentioned earlier, we have our multi-trip plans as well. So you could get a 4-day multi-trip annual policy, and that provides unlimited travel within Canada. So even if you're planning on going to BC for 90 days, you get a 4-day multi-trip plan. It covers you for that entire duration within Canada, and you have the added benefit of being able to travel outside of the country for 4 days at a time. So there's a lot of options available at CAA for stuff like that. Do I need 2 different multi-trip policies if I travel throughout the year in Canada and outside of Canada? No, you don't need 2 policies. Once again, the coverage we have is international. The multi-trip plan we have is international and provides that unlimited coverage within Canada. On multi-trip plans, how many days are required back in your home province between trips? We actually don't stipulate any number of days. You don't have to spend 24 or 48 hours. As long as you come back, you're able to, like Lindsay mentioned before, your duration, if you picked a 4, an 8, 15, a 30-day, as soon as you come back to Canada, that duration will restart and you're allowed to go and leave again for another 8-day or 15 days or 30-day trip, depending on the option you chose. That's it for travel insurance. I'll pass it back to Karen and Carrie.
Great. I think before we get into a little bit more travel details, I think we should get a little jump
Some
on
questions?
some of these fantastic questions.
Okay,
And
let's
I
do
do
it.
have to say my favorite is the multi-trip annual. Do it once and it's done. The peace of mind is wonderful. All right, so the first question is how large are our together groups? So they vary from 15 passengers right up to 42. So they're relatively small groups. Next one is pre-existing health issues. So I think we've addressed some of those. If anyone has any further specific question, maybe you can add a little bit more detail. Can an adult child of a member use together trips? Yes. Or solo trips without the member joining on a trip. So we offer a price break of a minimum $300 for being a member. Non-members can certainly take our trips. And I mean, typically our trips are not geared towards children, but certainly we will accommodate like an adult child, or if you have any specific questions about the child's age, be sure to talk to us. We'll get you all sorted. Okay, so they have to have their own membership. So one person needs to be a member on that actual booking. My husband's 82 and he's on medication for heart and stroke. How much will insurance cost him?
It's a good question. You would have to speak. I wouldn't be able to give you we go by age. We go by the answers that you provide us on the medical questionnaire. It really depends on the duration as well. Obviously, if you're going for 5 days, it's going to be much less expensive than if you're planning on going for 90 days. So the best way to get an accurate price, it's very hard for me to give you even just an estimate, is to speak to a CAA travel insurance representative. They'll be able to pull a quote together. They're going to ask you some questions to get a little bit more detail about the past medical history, and then they'll set you up with the options that best match your needs at that time.
Great. How old do you need to be for that questionnaire you're talking about there, Nick?
Oh, good question. I think, Carrie, maybe I might be wrong on this. Is everybody over 60, right? 60 and over is the medical questionnaire?
Yes.
Great. Yeah. So anybody over 60.
What are the main advantages of our insurance coverage versus what's available from major premium credit cards? Great question.
Yeah, so credit cards, I don't want to start bashing credit card coverage because some of it is good. It's just it's really hard. It's first of all, the people that are selling you the credit cards, they're not insurance specialists, right? So that's the first part. It's very hard to contact a credit card company and said, hey, give me the specifics exactly what I'm covered for. A lot of the time, they're just going to read off of the policy booklet and say, like, they're not going to be able to give you really too much insight. So dealing with somebody at CAA who's working in travel insurance, they're going to be able to really explain to you and put some of these benefits into context. So you'll have a much better understanding of your travel insurance by dealing with somebody at CAA versus a credit card. And the credit card coverages vary drastically. So compared to, and I'll name just some competitor, Blue Cross, Manulife, you've heard these names before, they have somewhat similar coverage to what we have at CAA. We have all those unique benefits that we highlighted before, but it's somewhat, there's a little bit more standardization. With credit card coverage, it's all over the place. Sometimes it's 500,000 maximums, sometimes it's 1 million, sometimes it's unlimited. Sometimes they'll cover pre-existing conditions, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll say if you didn't book the trip, if you didn't pay for the trip on the credit card, the travel insurance does not accompany you, right? Sometimes they'll say if you're between the ages of 60 to 65, you get 15 days of coverage. But if you're between the ages of 66 and 70, you get 8 days. And then if you're 70 or over, you get no days. So what we see happen sometimes is people are just so used to leaving and relying on their credit card coverage that they don't even remember that they have no coverage left because they turned 71 and the travel insurance doesn't apply anymore. So there's a whole bunch of things. It's varying coverage. Some of them are great and some of them are not. So if you want to use credit card coverage, it's really important to at least speak to a CAA travel insurance representative and start comparing coverage, right? Make sure we're comparing apples to apples. And if you feel you have adequate coverage through your credit card and you've done your research, that's great. Honestly, the goal is to make sure that you have that adequate coverage. But I could tell you a lot of the times from what I've seen, it seems to be insufficient. It seems to be limited and restrictive in some cases. So
Excellent. Very similar next question. When booking a trip, can we look at the credit card coverage for travel insurance and advise what I need to buy through CA, like a coordination of benefits?
So yeah, there is a coordination of benefits, then that's standard across the entire industry. No matter where you buy your travel insurance policy, there's going to be a coordination of benefits in the policy at some point. So that's normally done behind the scenes. That doesn't involve you. That's a recoveries team on either of the insurance company's side that's going to go work with any other coverage. So if you have a group plan, if you have credit card, if whatever private insurance that you have, or group insurance that you have, the insurers are going to coordinate benefits with each other, right? They're going to say who's first payer, and then they're going to go recoup from the other providers that you have. And regarding credit card coverage, it's the same thing. It would be the same scenario.
Great. Somebody's asking if they can get the slides after this is over. So this presentation will be on our website. The very last slide, you can actually hit a QR code to get that, but it'll be posted on our website tomorrow, CA North and East. Do you recommend travel insurance for travel to other provinces in Canada?
Yeah, so we covered that off in the presentation. So there's a couple of options for you. If you're only planning on doing like 1 8-day trip to another province, we have very attractive in Canada, cheap, super affordable, really good coverage. Gives you that peace of mind knowing that anything that's not covered by your government healthcare plan will be covered by that plan. Alternatively, if you're thinking of doing a longer duration trip within Canada, I would suggest looking at the multi-trip plans because once again, you could get something like a 4-day multi-trip plan. I think in most cases it's like between 30 and 50 bucks, right? That also depends on age and past medical history, but on average, it's not very expensive. It provides you that unlimited travel within Canada. And once again, you get the added benefit of using that plan to go to the States for up to 4 days at a time if you'd like. So speak to your CAA travel insurance representative. They'll set you up with the best option depending on what your travel plans are.
Great. If you're taken to hospital by ambulance, will medical insurance cover costs at any hospital or only those on your list?
So most of the time it's any hospital, but what we suggest, and this is another important thing, so I should have covered this off in the presentation. When you guys can, when it's possible for you, it's important to call the assistance number. So you get a little wallet card, right? When you leave and you have your wallet card with your travel insurance policy, keep that handy. Put it on your phone, take a picture of it, do what you have to do to have that on you. Because if something happens, it's important to call the assistance company before seeking medical attention when it's possible. Obviously, if you're having chest pains, you're not going to be rummaging around looking for your insurance information. You're calling 911, right? Which is fine. We will arrange for direct billing with the majority of hospitals and clinics. The advantage of calling us beforehand is there's a few. One, we could point you to a hospital or a clinic that's in our network where we could essentially guarantee that we're going to arrange for direct billing, so nothing comes out of your pocket. Two, we could send you to a clinic and a hospital that has a certain standard of care, right? We don't do business with any hospital or clinic. We want to make sure that they provide a certain level of care in order to be part of our network. So by guaranteeing that level of care, we know, like, especially in the States, this is less of an issue. If you're traveling to more exotic destinations, this is where if you're just going to any clinic that's down the street that you saw and you didn't speak to the travel insurer first, like we don't know what that hospital or clinic looks like inside, cleanliness, like what the procedures are. We can't guarantee that level of care. So it's good to call beforehand. And the other advantage of being within our network is we will monitor the progress of your treatment. We're going to call you, be in touch with you, speak to the physicians, make sure that everything is going right, keeping your family posted, right? As Lindsay and I mentioned before, we don't just look at the medical situation in isolation. We try to deal with all of the challenges that come with experiencing a medical situation while you're away. So those are some of the few advantages of calling the assistance beforehand. But to answer a question, no, and I could say confidently, the majority of places in the United States, it's not a problem if you go to the place down the street, but you lose out on some of those advantages that I just mentioned.
And I love your tip about taking the picture of the wallet card and also share that picture with your travel companion too. Another little insider tip. Can you purchase only trip cancellation, interruption, and luggage, etc., without medical?
Yeah, we have non-medical plans that include so we have trip cancellation and trip interruption. Then we have our non-medical, which will add baggage to that. So you'll have cancellation, interruption, and baggage. Then we have our emergency medical, which is you could buy all of these by themselves, or we have the package plans that just throws everything together.
Would you cover repatriation if your car is wrecked, if there were no injuries?
Repatriation, do you mean repatriation of the car?
Yes.
Or of you?
Yeah.
The return of vehicle?
Of the car.
That's a good question. If the car is totaled, because it ends up costing like probably 10 grand or so, 10, 15 grand to bring the car back. If the car's not worth that anymore, probably, but that's a good question. I'll have to take that one away. We've never actually experienced that one yet. So.
Okay. If you have coverage in retirement from your employer, credit cards, medical coverage, and CA coverage, who pays first?
So we would like for you to call. It really depends who you call. The first person, if you call the assistance number for your group insurance, if you call the assistance number from your credit card coverage, if you call the assistance number on our wallet card that we provide to you, they're the ones that are going to start as first payer. And then once again, they'll go in the back end and coordinate benefits with any other insurance plans that you have. So it really depends who you call first. We'd like you to call us first because we think we do a good job with the claims and assistance. So.
Is scuba diving considered adventurous activity? Are you covered?
No. So we do have that in our standard policy. You wouldn't need an additional rider to cover scuba diving, but I believe it requires some level of certification in order to be covered.
Great. If your follow-up is after the date of departure, then would you be denied?
I think this was in relation to your example, Lindsay, of when you were talking about pre-existing.
If the follow-up, if the follow-up was planned after the return?
If your follow-up is after the date of departure, then you would be denied. Because this question came shortly after you were saying that, Lindsay.
Yeah, you wouldn't be denied, you'd be excluded though. So what that means is, for example, if I go and I pass, let's say I start having symptoms of a heart condition, right? And I go do investigative tests, they do ECG, and I do a stress test, and I do all of that, but then I go away on vacation tomorrow, but I'm awaiting the results from that test. Like I can't be covered for that, right? The insurance company doesn't know what's happening with your condition. So if you're awaiting any test results or any new tests or any investigative testing or diagnostic results, right, that would become an exclusion on the coverage if you don't have those before leaving.
Okay. Are there any pre-existing conditions that are not covered?
Nope, only the ones that are unstable. So for example, I have a heart attack tomorrow morning, I get an angioplasty, I get treated. and then I plan a vacation and I'm still going and it's next Friday, right? I don't think I'll be able to find any coverage for that heart condition. We actually do have options at CAA. We call it individual medical underwriting. So in very specific circumstances, you can work directly with your CAA representative. They're going to speak with us directly. We're going to ask you a couple of additional questions. The premium, in full transparency, the premium is expensive, but we cover all pre-existing medical conditions regardless of stability. So we have three options. If you're stable, you meet the definition of stability, and you have that 6 months of stability that Lindsay mentioned earlier, you're good to go. You buy our standard plan, and that's the best price that you'll pay. Second option is the pre-existing condition rider, which Lindsay just mentioned as well. So if you're comfortable with having $200,000 of coverage for that unstable pre-existing medical condition, the rider reduces the stability period from 6 months down to just 7 days prior to your departure, and it gives you that $200,000 of coverage. And then as a last resort, we could go through the individual medical underwriting. If you are not comfortable with the $200,000 of coverage, or you don't have that 7 days of stability, this is something that we could try and find a way to provide you coverage for that pre-existing medical condition, but it's no guarantee. And when it does work, there's a tailored premium that comes with that as well. The coverage is tailored, but the premium is tailored as well.
Great. Okay, we'll take a little break from the questions. We'll come back to them at the end. So travel confidently with CAA Travel. So using a travel consultant, as I mentioned earlier, our team are all Travel Smart certified, meaning they've done some certification courses to make sure they're up to date on, the rules and regulations of traveling right now and what's happening in the world. Your team at CAA are all experienced consultants. We're traveling, we've been there, we're making sure that we've got all the details covered, and they work in some incredible teams. They've got easy access to documentation and details of every country in the world, the rules, the regulations, the visa requirements, keeping on top of the schedule changes that are still going on, and all the details for you. So a travel consultant will save you time, will save you money. They're getting you access to exclusive member benefits. And again, as I mentioned, our team are traveling. They're traveling right now across the world to make sure that they're up to date on what's new, what's hot, where you should be going next, and basically going to be your CAA travel expert. So a great little checklist for your winter travel, stocking up on medications. Another little tip, be sure you never pack your medications in your suitcase that's going on the airplane. Make sure it's always in your carry-on, preferably within the original bottles if you can, and keep that with you at all times. Forward your mail. Create an illusion that somebody is home, or better yet, have somebody check in on your home. Switch to online billing so you don't have a lot of mail piling up. Set your home for the winter. So again, make sure it's not too cold in the house so things don't freeze up. And inspect your home's interior. Let others know you're away, your neighbors, etc. Unplug your appliances. Get documents in order. And as I mentioned, taking a little photocopy of not only your ticket wallet for your travel insurance, the most important thing you're going to be packing, but as well as your passport, and maybe leave that with some family at home so they have that there for you, as well as the information on where you're going to be traveling to. And of course, as we mentioned, protect your trip, your investment, and peace of mind to make sure that you've got adequate emergency medical as well as travel coverage. If anyone has any further questions, please fill them in. We're going to drop them in. Somebody had asked about our groups, and I'll just get you to go back to that slide. So that group departure there, that's a little QR code. You can just hover your phone over that. That will show you all of our group departures. If you'd like to get a CAA insurance quote, you can do it many ways. You can do it online. You can call our CAA travel counselors. Yes, you can go into a store and they'd be happy to assist you with your travel insurance quotes. And you can also book an appointment with us if you want to do that as well. CAA Travel Talks, this presentation will be on our website, CAA North and East, and you just hit Travel Talks. All right, so let's go back to some of our questions. Can you address travel within Canada to other provinces?
Yeah, so I think we've covered that a couple of times. So you have a couple of options. We have our in Canada travel plans for the emergency medical, cancellation, interruption, all of that. And we have our multi-trip plans that also provide you unlimited travel coverage while you're traveling within Canada. So a
When is
couple
the
of different
best
options.
Great. So when is the best time to book air travel? How many months ahead is for the best price? Well, Carrie can tell you that we are booking right into 2026. We are finding that the farther out that you book, the better the pricing is. The last minute deals are not like it used to be. COVID definitely changed things. The flights are absolutely full. I've traveled internationally the last few weeks, and every single flight, every seat is full. People are waiting to go on standby on the flights. So book in advance if you can. For example, let's just say you book a cruise with us. I mean, we can keep an eye on cruise prices, and sometimes if there's price decreases, we can adjust those for you where it is possible. But any other tips there on that, Carrie?
No, I agree. If you're researching flights and you see a price, I would go ahead and book it because, as Karen said, flights are going out full. Supply and demand, the closer you get to a departure, the price is going to go up. And depending on where you're going too. If you're traveling within Canada, we don't have very many air carriers going there. If you're going internationally, there's a lot more. So keep an eye out on it, and you see the best price, hop on it and book it.
Absolutely. And the trends, as we mentioned, I mean, we're still seeing the typical Mexico, Dominican Republic are absolutely
Caribbean.
full. And then, of course, you've got the Caribbean is always popular. Cruising is like absolutely going gangbusters. I mean, whether you're doing a quick Caribbean cruise in the winter to get out of town, or you're booking a Mediterranean cruise in January. Whoever would think January is a good time to go to the Med? But I did it last year and was absolutely spectacular because you didn't have the typical European crowds. The temperatures were still very comfortable, just needed a sweater. And it was a wonderful time to get around Europe in like January, February, March, which is typically off season. So that's another little tip too, is again, the peak of, the Christmas holidays and the March breaks for the Caribbean, we know are always busy. You need to definitely book those well in advance. If a trip cancellation is combined with medical and you cancel just because you're not comfortable going, do you get any refund?
So if you have the package plan, no, we can't actually split out the rating to refund you the medical portion and then pay your claim for the trip cancellation. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but there's if you have two separate plans, so let's say you buy the emergency medical as one plan, as a standalone plan, and you buy a secondary trip cancellation plan, then yes, we would be able to cancel and reimburse the medical insurance only, and then you submit a claim on the cancellation policy. But it's not necessarily the most we don't necessarily recommend that. The package plans, normally the rates are a little bit better than splitting out these policies and buying them separately.
Okay, so somebody here has a little question. They've made a river or a river cruise booking for next year, and they were not told about the cancel for any reason of 50%. So it's not 50% with CA, it's 75%. And if you have any specific questions to that particular departure, I'm going to ask you to go back to your travel counselor, and we'll certainly assist you with that one. Would an extension of a trip qualify for interruption for any other reason insurance with CA Travel Insurance?
An extension of a trip?
Would an extension of a trip qualify for interruption?
Any other reason insurance was the
I'm not sure I understand. So if you need to extend your trip, you could definitely extend the insurance coverage if you need to. You'll have to pay for the additional premium for the additional days that you're looking for. And if you have a package plan, then you would also extend that interruption coverage that would follow for the extension. But
I was going to say, if you need more clarification on that, and if the person's still on, feel free to reach out to us at CA, and we'll be happy to answer the question.
Does the bounce back rider apply to a medical emergency? So if you are returned home due to a medical emergency, can you use the bounce back rider to return to your destination if you recover?
so that's not the bounce back coverage. The bounce back coverage is if you're away and then something happens to your home or something happens to your immediate family member. then that would give you the coverage to come home, deal with your affairs, and then return back to your trip. If you're the one that had a medical emergency and you were repatriated back to Canada, generally, no, we wouldn't cover the flight to get you back to your destination. It really depends on the severity of your situation as well. Like, it really depends if you're even able to continue traveling after that. But no, for in our emergency medical plans, that would not be covered.
Does travel insurance cover flight delays that result in hotel stays for possibly several days?
We do have some coverage regarding subsistence allowance. I apologize, I don't have the exact details off the top of my head right now, but I would suggest you speak to your CAA travel insurance representative. There are details around that if there are flight delays. We do have certain coverage for hotels, meals, accommodations, things like that. I just don't know the precise details and the amounts that are covered.
Great. Do you have any group cruises planned? We do have one in the works right now. It's a combination Holland America Alaska cruise with Rocky Mountaineer. We did it for 24, 25 is almost sold out. We do have some special CA group nationally rates with celebrity cruises, and we can certainly set up something specific. You know, if you have a small group that you'd like to put together. But as far as Together Groups by CA Travel, we are certainly building right now for 25 and 26. So stay tuned. Would a CA travel insurance plan be first payer at the time of claim?
Yeah, well, it depends. If you called us first, then yes.
Do we book MSC cruises? We can. They're not one of our preferred partners, but we can book them. We have covered credit card coverage. What about Medoc for public servants and retired people?
Yeah, so I believe Medoc was an RSA plan, and I'm not sure Johnson plan, I believe. I might be mistaken on that, but yeah, so Medoc, I think, has like a 40-day annual policy that you guys are covered. Just validate what coverage is included. Once again, make sure that you at least shop around and that you're comparing apples to apples. Make sure that you have at least that $5 million of coverage. Understand if your pre-existing medical conditions are covered. You're gonna have to do a little bit of research if you have an existing plan. Just to make sure that it is adequate for your needs. But it's always good to shop around, see what's available on the market, and make sure that you're comparing apples to apples, right? If somebody's giving you a price that's $200 and everybody else is quoting you $1,000, right? There might be a problem with a $200 policy. So,
do we know if there are any gaps in the federal government travel medical coverage, which is provided for up to 40 days?
I think that's the same plan. I think that's actually the Johnson and Maddox plan. I'm not sure, but from I looked at this quite a while ago. It seemed to be a good plan the last time I looked at it, but these things change over time. So I wouldn't be able to speak to exactly what's being provided by Johnson Maddox, but it's important once again just to validate some of those major points that I mentioned. What's the stability? What's the pre-existing medical condition coverage? What's the maximum that you have on the policy? Are there any high deductibles that are automatically applied? Do you have like a $10,000 deductible? That's something that you should be researching. Make sure you understand your coverage before leaving.
Do you cover costs if you receive medical attention from non-member providers?
I imagine that ties back to the one of the first questions around the network. Yeah, we'll cover pretty much if it's a payable claim, right, and it's a legitimate claim. We'll pay it. It's just sometimes depending on where you are, some hospitals, especially less in the States, but in some other countries, the hospitals might say, we don't deal with Canadian insurance companies. Give me your credit card, right? So that's the advantage of calling us first before going to see a doctor or getting medical attention. We could refer you to a clinic or a hospital that's in our network that once again, we could guarantee a certain level of care, and two, arrange for that direct billing.
So I think this one's a little bit more a non-member and member. I'm a CA member. I have treated my family to a trip to Mexico, and I've purchased all the airline tickets. Can they get a trip travel insurance for themselves if they've not paid for the airline ticket themselves?
Yeah, so the insurance policies actually have to be in the traveler's name. This is a really good question. If you're the one that paid for everything, the insurance still needs to be in their name. So if something happens to them, they need to have a correlating insurance policy with their name on it in order to be covered, right, for that value. And in most cases, we'll be reimbursing that sum insured or that value of the trip to the person that's named on the policy, and then they should be refunding you if you're the one that paid for that trip.
What if I have a pre-existing condition that occurred over 5 years ago and is no longer active, and I forgot to mention it? Will I be denied coverage? Will I be denied coverage for a condition which occurs during my trip? Will it nullify my coverage?
No, no, it really depends on the pre-existing medical condition. So we have some in our medical questionnaire, we deal with various timelines. Sometimes we'll ask you, did something related to, for example, this might not be completely accurate, but did you have a gastrointestinal condition in the last 12 months? Or did you have a heart condition in the last 5 years? Or did you have cancer ever? Right? So there's varying timelines when you're answering the medical questionnaire. You want to make sure you're answering that questionnaire accurately. If this is a pre-existing medical condition that you're no longer treated for and you don't have any other follow-ups and there's no medications and it happened once and it's done, if it's still named on the medical questionnaire, you have to still say like, yes, if the question is in the last 5 years, did you have this condition or did you have a condition like this or have you ever had such a condition? You have to answer yes to that. Will it affect your coverage? No. If you're stable, if you meet that stability requirement of 6 months, which it sounds like you do, it shouldn't have any adverse effect on your coverage.
Is there a cost to use a travel consultant? Typically, no. We do charge professional fees if you're booking an air only, but if you're booking a package with us or a cruise, there are no fees. And our team, as I mentioned, will certainly guide you through the whole process, from start to finish and when you're coming back. So they're there for you every single step of the way. So somebody said you might want to mention car rental overseas through CAA. On a 1 month trip to France and Spain, I found this excellent and cheaper than they found on the web. Any info on the new visas for Europe, the ETIAS, and when this is starting? So this is a program that has been announced and delayed, I think, several times now. I believe it says the spring now of 25.
It's starting in May of 2025 is what it's saying now,
Okay.
but it was supposed to be May of 2024 too. So
Yes. Yeah, so your travel counselor will certainly have that information, but as I mentioned, it's been delayed several times. Does travel insurance vary based on the country travel safety status as per Global Affairs Canada?
Yeah. So before traveling, it's always important to validate. So Karen, I think you spoke about this, making sure that you understand what the travel advisories for the destination that you're planning on going to. They can affect your coverage. If you're planning on going to a place where there's a level 4 advisory, where the Canadian government has said, do not travel to this destination, and you decide to go either way, it could have an adverse effect on your coverage. So it's important to validate those travel advisories. If there is one in place that's above a level 1, or a level 2. Normally there's 4 levels. Level 3 or 4 is where things start to get where it could affect your insurance coverage. So search on that Canadian government website that you just mentioned. Make sure you understand what the travel advisory is, and then speak to your CAA travel insurance representative to see if that would have an impact.
Yeah, travel.gc.ca is our Canadian government website that we refer to all of the time. And as we're making bookings, we're checking from at the start of the booking to the end, making sure that travel advisory is the same. And so somebody's asking a very similar question. So if you book a trip, for example, in Turkey, that was listed as safe when they booked, and then that rating changes, is the coverage void?
Coverage isn't void, no. So depending on what the level of the travel advisory is, you actually have that's one of the insured risks in our policy. So if you have cancellation insurance, you bought your trip, it was a level 1 or level 2 where it says practice normal safety precautions. There's no travel advisory in place, and then it goes up to a level 3 or a level 4 where it says avoid all travel. That's a reason for you to cancel your trip and get 100% of your cancellation or your sum insured back. So you can make that decision. You could also continue with the trip. However, anything related to that advisory becomes an exclusion. So for example, if the level 3 or level 4 advisory is put in place for something like civil unrest or threats of terrorism, these are some of the things that we see in the countries that have level 3 and level 4s. If ever you're involved or hurt or something, your claim is related to something related to that advisory, it wouldn't be covered, right? That becomes an exclusion. However, if the advisory is in place for civil unrest and you fall and you break your leg, you're still covered for that, right? It's not related to the travel advisory.
Can we get help to plan a road trip, driving to Florida, for example, where to stay, which highways, etc.? So you're going to be able to do your own online triptych now. Our member service counselors in our stores can certainly help you, or you can give us a call over the phone and we will certainly help you plan your hotel stays. If you need car rentals, or of course your insurance during your trip, we'll certainly be able to assist you with that. All right. Okay, so the details of the professional fees. There are some, again, member benefits. So member benefits for professional fees are waived. And I'm going to not get into the specifics, but our CAA Travel team will certainly be able to assist you with that. All right, so that looks like it's it for any of the rest of the questions. Any other comments? Our team here, CAA team?
No, great questions.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was a lot of great questions. Of course, insurance is typically always has the most detailed questions because, as we mentioned, it's really important that you understand your coverage and make sure that you're fully protected. And we're here to help you with that. Come on into the store, give us a call, or simply message us online, whatever your preference is, and we'll be certainly willing and able to help you with all of your further questions. And we look forward to assisting you, plan your incredible dream winter trip. It's the most fun time when you're doing all the planning and anticipating and getting out of the cold in the winter, and having that next trip booked is definitely a wonderful time. All right, so thank you, everyone. Thanks, Carrie and Nick and Lindsay.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We wish you a great rest of the evening.
Have a
Thanks,
great
everyone.
night.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you. Bye.